Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dinner's Going to Be a Little Late Tonight. We seem to be having some Wi-Fi issues, so bear with us because there's a little bit of skipping going on here. Right, Patty?
Yes. So if the internet gods are not kind to us today, please hang in and just, it's part of the quarantine lifestyle, right? Bad internet. So anyway, stick with us because we've got a great show today. John's got a family secret he's going to share with us. What do we make it, John?
Well, family secrets. That's a lot. Sorry, say that again?
I don't want to lose any viewers. You got to make it sound like it's going to be good, right?
Well, it is going to be good. So those of you that have watched some of these episodes know that I make a lot of food that has been passed through the generations of my family. And my grandparents immigrated from Sicily to the United States many years ago, and my mom was the firstborn, and her brothers were born here in the United States. My grandparents didn't speak English very well, and they showed their love through cooking, and the meals were amazing, fantastic, unbelievable. And there is one recipe we're going to share with you today for my mom's Sicilian meatballs that she learned from her mom, and her mom learned from her mom. And so it's been passed down through the generations, and we're excited to share it with you today.
Someday, John, you'll pass it on to your girls, right?
I'm trying. They love to eat them. In fact, they beg me to make them. But as far as actually participating in making them, yeah, not yet. Not yet. They're not that excited.
Well, when I was making them today, because we're being kind of fancy with our presentation today, but one thing I noticed was I always thought making meatballs was like this huge production and really daunting. And and I got to tell you, first of all, it was very simple, very straightforward. And everything just smelled so good the minute I started making them. Even before I cooked them, I was like, oh, and I hadn't even had breakfast yet. My stomach was growling. I'm like, oh man, these are primo. I'm not surprised. All right, so before we get started on this week, let's go back to, it was actually 2 weeks ago that we made our steak quinoa bowl, Chipotle steak quinoa bowl with black beans. And I hope everybody tried it. A couple of things about it. One thing that I forgot to share with you that is one of my favorite things is, I love leftovers. And no, I don't have any of those leftovers left. But one of my favorite things to do with that dish is the next day, have the leftovers cold with a little Italian dressing, a little vinaigrette. Mwah, so freaking good. And also just reminder that it's a great bowl that you can adjust to whatever ingredients you like. You want a different kind of bean, you want a different kind of protein, you want to take something out, add something back in, maybe onions, just saying. You can, and also it's a great thing for parties or tailgates, if we ever get to go outside again, or a picnic. So it's a really versatile dish. So, all right, but let's get started on this week, John. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for being here. We're going to make my mom's Italian meatballs. And so right off the bat, there are a few things that are different about this recipe from perhaps other meatballs you've made or tasted. One of the things is that it's equal parts ground beef and ground pork. And a lot of people don't make them that way, but the pork gives it a little flavor and a little stickiness that is delicious. The other ingredient that's interesting and different is mint, fresh mint, chopped up and put into the recipe, which gives it a very fresh flavor. And the last ingredient is sugar, which, again, I don't think many people know can go in meatballs, but it gives it this very special flavor. So I grew up with eating these. I didn't even need them to be in sauce or on pasta. I would just eat them with a fork, but they're great in sandwiches and certainly on top of spaghetti. So let's get started. Oh, and thanks, Henry. Henry's here. Thanks. Meatballs are my favorite. Love it.
Oh, you're going to love these, Henry. These are amazing. And it's funny, John, because when I was making them, the sugar and the mint, not the pork, because I have made them with pork before, and I know that that's a great way to do it. But the sugar and the mint did catch my eye. And I'm not a big fan of plain, just plain mint, but I do like to cook with mint. And I think it does add a really great flavor used in moderation. So I'm really excited to taste these.
Yeah. So, okay. So we already made some so that we could show you what it looked like in stages. So right now we're going to be making meatballs from scratch. So we're going to show you all the ingredients, but know that what we're using are half the ingredients because we already used half to make the others to show you. So normally it would look twice as large as this. And so I'm going to give you the actual proportions, not the proportions that we are throwing into this bowl. So you start with a pound of ground beef and a pound of ground pork. I love Neiman Ranch. I'm a brand ambassador for Purdue Farms, and I get to taste a lot of their products. They own Neiman Ranch, and so the ground beef and ground pork is of the highest quality. And I just love the flavors, so I use those today. And you can see them side by side in the bowl. Ground beef is very pink. Ground pork is brown, more brown, but we're going to be mixing them together. So to that mixture, we add we've chopped up a small yellow onion. So I'm going to put the chopped onions into the bowl. And then another key ingredient are all the fresh herbs. So we've got fresh parsley, and it calls for a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley. So I'm going to throw that in. And this is all going to go into the bowl together, and then we're going to get our hands dirty because you got to mix it up and roll the meatballs. And that's the fun part. I mean, I like it. If you ever made mud pies as a kid, you know what I mean. Except this tastes better.
Much better.
Much better. So then we're going to go to some, what are the other, I skipped. Fresh rosemary. Now you can use dry rosemary and you can use dry mint. It'll taste a little bit different. Don't use dry parsley, but it may be harder for you to find, fresh rosemary or fresh mint, although they do sell it in the store on the regular basis. But so we're going to put fresh rosemary, and it calls for 1 tablespoon of fresh rosemary. So we'll throw that in.
So John.
Yes.
If you're substituting dry for fresh, the proportions are different, right?
I don't know.
You don't.
Do you know?
It's not.
I don't.
Well, I think it is. And
do you make it different?
Well, a lot of times recipes will say that. And honestly, this might be something our viewers and our people out there are going to help us with. It always seems to me that they say to use whatever it is. It seems backwards to me. It's like if you're using, to me, you would use. I don't know. It's like if you use dry, you use more fresh than dry or more dry than fresh. But whatever it is, it seems like. I'll work on that. I'll get back to you.
Well, is anybody
there is a differentiation.
And if you're watching and you know the answer to this, please type it in the comments and we'll share it with the gang. All right, yeah. So mint, fresh mint. And again, the fresh makes a difference. I highly recommend it. It's what my family always used, and we grew it in our vegetable garden in the yard. It's actually, mint is one of the easiest ones to grow because it just takes off. And it just needs a lot of water. So we're putting in, it calls for a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh mint. So we're throwing that in. And then we go with the garlic. So it wants 2 cloves of garlic. And us Italians, we love our garlic. You got to put garlic in everything, and it makes it taste better. So 2 cloves of garlic chopped. Oh, I need a spoon. Chopped garlic.
I couldn't believe there was only garlic. I couldn't believe there were only 2 cloves of garlic in this recipe. I know how much you love garlic.
Well, I'm just following the family recipe, so I did not put any more than it called for.
It was a little tricky when I was making this, and I had to do half and half and put half in the bowl and then half in my stuff for later. It was like math. And remember, everybody, I was an English major. The only time I use math is cooking or figuring out how much money I don't have or discount on it. Like, what's 20% off of this dress? I know how to do that.
You know how to do that.
I do know how to do that.
Or
All
converting.
right. Anyway, what's next, John?
Converting dollars to pesos or pesos to, anyway. So now sugar. Sugar is an important part of this. And it calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar, which might sound like a lot, but it just gives it a little bit of sweetness to sort of counteract that tart tomato sauce taste. And so the 2 things go so beautifully together, makes it delicious. So then we need some binding agents. So we have a lot of dry things here with the meat, but we need some things that are going to hold these meatballs together. So we put Parmesan cheese, and it's asking for a half of a cup of Parmesan cheese, which to me, you can never have too much cheese in my book. I love me the cheese. Then we're putting a cup of dry breadcrumbs. And, breadcrumbs come in a lot of shapes and flavors. You can get them at Trader Joe's. They come in a baggie in Trader Joe's. You can get them in a tube at the grocery store, and they come plain and Italian flavored. I use the plain because I already flavored this quite a bit. The Italian flavored works for other things, but maybe not for this. So we're putting in the breadcrumbs. And then last, to hold it all together and to just sort of provide that stickiness, is an egg. So we're going to throw an egg in. And that is it, except for a little salt and pepper. So I'm going to grind some salt and pepper in it, and then we're going to get our hands dirty.
So, John, pretty tricky dividing an egg in half, isn't it? I felt pretty smart today. Ramekin, I whipped it up and I measured it halfway.
Well, I had to make my mom write this recipe down, and I see my cousin Lisa's on here, and Lisa knows, like, our family didn't write recipes down. They would just say, a little of this, a little of that. You throw this together and it comes out great. Well, I don't cook. I need someone to tell me. Like, I need the instruction. Yeah. So, Lisa, I know you know now how I feel, but I had to ask my mom to write this down so that I could actually make it the right way and not mess it up.
Lisa, is he doing it right? Is he doing it right?
Yeah, Lisa, you have to call me out if I'm not doing it right.
John, did you see that Henry said he grew up eating albondigas, Tex-Mex style?
Ooh, yeah. I love albondigas. The soup especially.
Is it time?
Say again?
Is it time?
It's time. Yeah, we're going to get our hands dirty. So
okay.
Remember that I'm a brand ambassador for Purdue Farms. One of the reasons why I love using their product, and particularly Neiman Ranch for this, is because I can get it delivered right to my door. So I don't have to go search for it. I don't have to find out what stores are carrying it. I can order it online with a whole bunch of other delicious things and have it delivered right to my door. So when you go to look at the recipe for this on our blog, you'll see that there's a link there that you can order directly from Purdue Farms via my link and get a few extra perks. So it's always a good time. So, ready? Okay, so now we're just going to reach in with our clean hands, our COVID-free hands. We've cleaned and sterilized. And we're going to mix and mix with our hands to make it all mash together. So it's kind of fun. It's like making a sandcastle. Like I said before, making a mud pie. It's a lot better tasting than either of those things. But we're just mixing it all together with our hands to combine it. So you just mash it together, squeeze it, let it go between your fingers. It's very satisfying. What do you think, guys?
I'm just trying to keep it out of my wedding ring.
Oh, well, that's a personal problem I can't help you with.
Well, that's how great this recipe is, because that was one of my things. Like, I don't always like doing this process. And we made them this morning, no goop in my wedding rings.
See?
That family of yours.
I know. I've got a great family. So what this ends up looking like is this is like meatloaf. I mean, it's almost kind of the same way you make meatloaf. There's a few more ingredients in here that make it special and Italian to make it meatballs, but a lot of the same stuff goes into making meatloaf. We're just making small little balls of meatloaf, right? In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have created this, and it's all mixed. Patty, is yours mixed together?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to make the meatballs themselves, and that's the part that you get to play with. So it doesn't matter what size they are. If they're bigger, it just takes longer to cook them. But you're going to cook them in the sauce anyway. So ideally, the sauce is something that you're cooking over a longer period of time. But I usually make them a little bigger than a golf ball. Can you see? So a little bigger than a golf ball. That's about the size that I make them. My mom used to make them much smaller. And it just, that way you got to eat more of them, I guess, if you were in the mood for to, like, say I ate 12 meatballs for dinner, but I usually make them this size.
A golf ball is a very good gauge for me because, as you know, my son is an assistant golf pro and my husband's a big golfer. My dad was a big golfer. So I love that. The visual of that in the recipe, I'm like, I got golf ball. I can do golf. I can't play golf.
Perfect.
The size of a golf ball.
So if you do it that size, you'll end up from this recipe with somewhere between 10 and 12 meatballs. And I like that amount because when you are going to put them into the sauce to cook, they all have to be submerged. So you don't want to have too little sauce and too much meatball.
Yes.
All right, so I've got it done. Are you done? Patty, are you done?
Not okay, all of them. You made them
all rolled up and ready to go.
You're fast. Oh, yours are big. I think my golf ball is smaller than yours. That's all right. Go right ahead. I'll catch up.
Like I said before, the size isn't the most important. It's one of those, I'm going to wash my hands. It's one of those things that you get to decide. You can make them gigantic. I've been to restaurants where the meatball is huge. It just takes longer to cook. That's all, but it still tastes delicious.
The huge ones are like the size of a baseball. Another sport I never did, and that my son did.
Okay.
I have to tell you guys, these smell so good. They just smell awesome.
Hey, Christina. Yep, spaghetti and meatballs Sunday. So our family, this is another thing that's hilarious about Italian families. So Sunday dinner is a thing. We do it here with me and my kids. Sunday dinner is a thing. So, and it's usually like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and it lasts forever. But what's amazing about it, and I love to bring people who have never been to an Italian family dinner before. I love to bring them because the food just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. So first comes the pasta. So you're sitting there and you're like, you're eating the pasta and loving it. And then with bread and maybe salad comes out. And so people who are new to this, they fill up, they love it. Oh, they ask for seconds. Can I have another bowl of pasta? And Italian moms are happy to oblige. Oh, eat, have some more, mangia. So they have another bowl of pasta. Wow. Then they get the whammy. Then next comes out the next course, the meat course. Well, they didn't expect it because they're not used to having pasta as not a meal. And then another whole course comes out. So we'd have spaghetti and meatballs, bread, salad, everybody's like, oh, that was so good. And then comes out the roast and the potatoes and the vegetables and all that comes out. And then you eat a whole nother meal. And when that's done, then comes the dessert. So by the time you're done, you are going to just roll out of there. You're like one giant meatball. You're just going to roll out of the house. But it's hilarious when people are not prepared for it because they overeat early and then they don't save room for later. And then they don't want to be rude. So then they eat the plate of meat and vegetables and potatoes that are put in front of them. So it's kind of a trick, but fun. In today's world, that doesn't happen as often. And when I cook Sunday dinner, I choose one or the other. We're having a roast, or we're having some chicken or whatever, and then we are having pasta. But that looks beautiful.
Not bad. I'm not Italian, but I am Cuban.
Patty, are you frozen?
All right.
Patty, all right.
In the fridge, right, my dear?
So what we do with the meatballs is we put them into the refrigerator to chill for a bit, and it just hardens them up a little because you've been mashing them with your fingers and you're moving them around, and the best thing you can do is put them into the refrigerator for 20 minutes just so that they firm back up and that they solidify. The thing you don't want to have happen is that they're too loose or too wet. And then when you put them into the sauce, they fall apart, and you end up with ground meat. You end up with bolognese. You end up with tomato pasta with ground meat in it. That's not what you want. You want the meatballs to stay whole and solid and delicious. So this plate goes into the refrigerator, and then comes out. Ta-da! Just comes out of the refrigerator, and now they're a lot more solid, and if you feel them, they feel different. Those feel kind of wet and sticky. These are solid and ready to go. Patty, do you want to talk about wine while we're in the midst of this?
How'd you know I wanted to talk about wine? I did because Christina also brought up the wine. She must be talking about the Sunday dinner wine. So while we're taking a little quick pause here, Psalm Sid has her weekly wine pairing for us. And no surprise, today we have 2 red varietals, no white option. But again, if you like white wine and you don't like red, have some white wine. The right wine is the wine that you like. If you want to, the perfect food pairing for this dish is the first option is a Chianti Classico. I know, say it. A nice Chianti, some fava beans and a nice Chianti. And why a Chianti? So Chianti is from the region of Chianti, and the grape is Sangiovese, and it's a medium-bodied with great structure. And this is the one that Sydney purchased for me about 2 hours ago. And it's a Castiglione 2018 Chianti. And let's see what I think of it.
Okay. Castiglione. Can you say that with me?
Castiglione.
There you go.
The G and the L all together.
Yeah, you just put it all together.
So it's not Castiglione. I took Italian. I took a year of Italian my senior year of college at Cal Berkeley. I took 1 year of Italian after taking Spanish since 7th grade. I was completely bilingual in Spanish. I took Italian working at Il Fornaio Bakery, which had just opened in Berkeley. And I was going to take Italian to learn Italian so that I could pronounce all of the cool breads and pastries that we were selling. And all it did was mess up my Spanish. And I remember sitting in the final and my first semester of Italian thinking, I can't tell if this is Spanish or Italian. So, io mi chiami Patty, something like that. That's all I remember. So, anyway, so this is
different enough. Like Spanish and Italian are different enough. I can understand it.
Yes.
And honestly, and I'm a Spanish speaker, not an Italian speaker. So I can understand Italian well enough to converse, and use my Spanish and just put a little extra accent on it. But I hear you on that. The words look the same but different enough that it trips you up.
Yep. So one other wine option is a Super Tuscan, which is just fun to say. I'll have a Super Tuscan. It's a varietal. It's a blend of Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Syrah. And this is an option if you want something bigger and bolder. So, thanks, Henry. So those are your wine options. Or again, anything you like. All right. So the meatballs have miraculously been in the refrigerator for 15 to 20.
I just wanted to call out Sydney. So you say Som Sid, and I don't know that everyone knows that Sydney is your daughter, and she's a sommelier.
It is true.
And you froze there. What did you say?
I know. I flaked out for a second. I didn't say anything. I just poofed out for a second. Yes, Sydney is my daughter. She is a sommelier. She usually lives in New York, but she's been home with us since March 15th. So.
COVID. At least you get more daughter-mom time, right? Okay, so
yes.
what we're going to do
Very
now
special.
is are we done with wine?
We are. Cheers.
Okay.
Well, we're not done with wine. I mean, I got a whole glass to drink, but yeah.
I'm talking about Super Tuscan. Okay, so we're taking the meatballs, and they've come out of the refrigerator, and we're going to plop them into the sauce that I've been making. So that's another thing we're going to share with you, not this episode, but in a future episode, is my mom's sugo recipe. So the sauce, that tomato sauce that is so famous in Italian restaurants, I'm going to show you our family recipe for it. And again, that's one of those secrets that we don't share. So lucky that you get to see that. Lucky that you get to be sharing that recipe. So soon, stay tuned for that. Soon, we will share it. But again, it's one of those passed down through the generations, no recipe. My mom's like, put a little of this and a little of that. And two funny things that are in it that you'll be surprised to know: cinnamon and nutmeg. We'll talk more about that when we share that recipe, but it makes a difference. Those spices make a little bit of a difference. And so we're going to plop these into the sauce, and the sauce has been cooking for hours. So that's the thing about Italian pasta. It cooks for hours on the stove. You start it in the morning a lot of times, and it cooks for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on the stove, just bubbling. And that's why it has that amazing flavor. That's why all those flavors break down and blend together, because they've been cooking so long and just slowly bubbling on the stove. So anyway, it's time. So we're putting these in, and we are literally plopping them in. Okay? So usually you'd be plopping in, I don't know, 10 or 12 of these things. So I'm just giving you an example today. The important thing to remember is that they must be covered. They must be immersed, because the pasta sauce is going to cook the meatballs. And you think about like how that would cook. Well, the sauce has to be hot enough, and the meatballs have to be in the sauce long enough for them to cook all the way through. The last thing you want to do is bite into a meatball and you're getting steak tartare inside. Not when you expect it. That's another dish. So this needs to cook through, which means that the meatballs need to be cooking and simmering in the sauce for like an hour. So this is a recipe you develop in stages over time. It's not one that's going to happen, like it's not a 30-minute meal. It's not. But the beauty of this is you start the sauce in the morning, you make the meatballs, you put them in the refrigerator, and then at some point you plop them into the sauce, at least an hour before you're going to eat. But they could be in there for 3 hours. It doesn't matter. They don't overcook because the sauce is so wet that they just stay moist. You're just making sure they're cooked all the way through.
Yeah, mine have been in there for about 2 hours. This is like a crock pot meal, though. Also, you have to do that caveat. This is one of those things that is going to torture you because you can smell how good it is all day long. So this is going to be another day where I'm going to have, like, the minute my husband comes home from dinner, I'll be like, reading now.
Okay, so we have been cooking some for a bit so that we can show you what it looks like when it's done. Let's talk about pasta, though, Patty, because there's. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the different pastas that work so well with this dish?
Well, we were talking about it. We were like, well, what do you have? And John said, well, I've got linguine. I've got dry linguine. I've got fresh pappardelle. I said, well, I have dry pappardelle and I have fresh linguine. And then it turned out that you use spaghetti instead. So any just long pasta will work, right?
Really, any will work. I don't know why that when you serve meatballs with pasta, you tend to want the long noodle, not the ziti or the rigatoni, or I don't know. It doesn't matter really. For some reason though, the traditional is like spaghetti or fettuccine or linguine or pappardelle. I made spaghetti noodles because that's what I had. And what did you make?
I made linguine because that's what I had. I just wanted to make sure it's not like some sacrilege, like your mom, Ann Bailey is going to be looking down at okay, because this is me, sometimes watching Dancing with the Stars while we're eating dinner. I like sometimes my husband really likes the penne or the bow tie. And I was like, well, could you do that? Would that be okay?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. It's just, and we're using this today because this is the more traditional, but it doesn't matter. It tastes delicious no matter what. And so I've got my spaghetti and Patty's got her linguine. And I think one of the things to remember is when you cook pasta noodles, how to do that and make sure that the water is salted. And why is that, Patty?
Well, it seasons, the seasoned water will season the pasta. And one thing that so my daughter is a sommelier in New York, and she works at a Michelin star wine bar, a wine bar from a Michelin star restaurant. And so she has worked with some pretty talented chefs. So since COVID began, she's been home and she's been cooking. And one of the first days she cooked some pasta and she put all this salt in the pasta water. And I put a little bit, half the time I forgot. And of course, my husband is standing there, there's too much salt. There's too much salt in the pasta water. And her boyfriend was over and he was like, oh my God, there's so much salt in the pasta. So Sydney said, your pasta water should taste like the sea. So of course, I love research. So I jumped in and I started looking at it. And that is a very popular adage that has been used through the years. But I was also reading today, one person said, and I thought this made a lot of sense, do you really like the way ocean water tastes? Isn't that a little too much? So bottom line is there's a lot of different kinds of salt, and different salts have different densities. But the ones that they seem to recommend the most are sea salt or kosher salt. And there's a couple different main brands of kosher salt. One of them is Morton, and the other one is Diamond. And they literally say, I got this little chart, and it literally says different amounts from Morton versus Diamond. Same kind of salt, different brand. Sea salt also comes in coarse and fine. So you can use either of those. So it depends on your taste. And it really kind of goes between, now this that they said around, if you're sensitive to salt, maybe a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon. If you like it seasoned with, but not a really strong salt flavor, 1.5 to 2 teaspoons. If you love salt, then a tablespoon, go big. And that's for a pound of pasta. And I don't know how many quarts that you put in your pasta pot. So I love salt. And just a plug to Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. If you don't have the book or you haven't watched the show, watch it. It's a fabulous book and show by a wonderful chef who's from Berkeley, another tie-in, go Bears. And the salt episode, so there's 4 episodes, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And the salt one is fascinating. And the whole deal with what they do with seaweed is insane. So I'm just going to leave that. That's your homework. If you haven't watched it, watch it. We'll talk about it next week. So yeah, that's why we salted our pasta water to season it up. And I think then there's tried and true.
This is what
you use.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what my mom used, so that's the way I use it too. And we all grew up in families where there were cooking traditions, and that's what we always used, and so it just stays with me, and that's called branding.
You know what? I usually use that too. That's why I thought this story was really interesting and all this research I did. One takeaway that I think is really important is don't use your fancy salt. Just go with the girl with the umbrella, or maybe a coarse salt or a kosher salt, but don't waste your fancy salt. So, all right, looking a little plain. Are we ready?
Okay, Are we ready to plate it?
I'm excited.
So I use a soup ladle because you get the meatball and the sauce together at the same time. So that's what I've got going here. And I've got, ooh, that looks good. That looks delicious.
Mm.
So these have been cooking in here for a while. You've got this delicious pasta sugo cooking here. And you end up with this delicious plate. Now, I don't know how many people would eat 3 meatballs on their pasta, but it looks nice, doesn't it? So I'm saying 3 meatballs is the way to go. Now, no pasta is complete without Parmesan cheese. So you definitely must, unless you are opposed to or don't like cheese or don't like Parmesan cheese. Romano cheese works great too. I like the combination you can buy of Parmesan and Romano cheese grated already. Patty was grating her own, but you sprinkle a little Parmesan and you are ready to feast.
Yay. Oh.
So the actual process of making the meatballs is not that hard. It doesn't take very long to make the meatballs. It's the steps and the stages of cooking it that you need to follow properly so that everything comes together and tastes the way it should. So now you know. Now you know how to make meatballs to go with your spaghetti.
Excellent. I can't wait for dinner. It's not going to be late because it's ready.
Ready.
Also, John, let's make sure that everyone knows that this recipe is already on the Two Dads with Baggage blog. So if you want to make it tonight, it's ready to roll. We don't have to wait for us to post it. It's already there.
It is.
While I'm thinking,
update it, Patty, and make it the newest so that people don't have to search for it. But yes, if you're ready right this minute, just go and search for the word meatballs and you'll find this recipe.
Cool. And
Patty, sorry. And it's on twodadswithbaggage.com. That's where you can find the recipe.
Yes. And while I'm thinking of it, I want to just let everybody know our dinner is going to be a little late tonight. Facebook and Instagram are up and running. So if you aren't already following both of those, please follow, share, like, so we can keep doing this fun thing. So John, what are we making next week?
I don't remember.
The Euros.
Oh yeah, so the Euro sandwiches, which is also a really fun way to use meats and leftovers, and it makes you can make a lot of it and keep the ingredients separate, and then just assemble the Euro sandwiches whenever you like. So it's one of those things that I make because our family doesn't always eat at the same time together, so I can make it, and then people can choose can assemble it and eat it on their own timing. So yeah, except on Sundays when I insist that we all sit down at the table and have our meal together. But people are working, kids are in school. It just doesn't happen the way that it used to when the kids were super little and we all sat down at the table. So yeah, that's one of those great recipes. So we'll be making gyros next week, and it's a sort of that Mediterranean style with a little bit of that seasoning and flavor and feta cheese and all those delicious good things. I love feta cheese.
I do too. I'm so excited because I love gyros and I've never made them myself. So I'm very excited about that. So cool.
Awesome.
All right.
So we so appreciate you guys tuning in and watching the show today. Please share it and consider having your friends watch it. It's recorded, so you can watch it on YouTube or on Facebook Live. So you can always come back to it and watch us. While you're reading the recipe on the blog, you can watch us making it here. Hopefully you're having a good time, and thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock to make gyros, right?
Yep. See you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Manja, manja.
Manja, manja.